Josh Kroenke, less than an hour ago, talking about the changes they made, the role of Nikola. That is actually how you're supposed to say his name. Nobody does it really, but that's the right way to say
Except
it.
Cause.
Nikola Jokic.
Jokic.
Let me play some more from Josh and see what you guys think. This is on, let's see here. Let's just start with the opening statement, how he addressed everything going on.
Big week for the Denver Nuggets last week and some of the decisions that were made. I think I want to start off by initially just saying thank you to both Calvin and Coach Malone. It was an incredibly tough decision for us for a lot of levels, but I think at the very end of the day it was a very tough decision because of the amount of respect that I personally have and that we as an organization have for both of what those gentlemen did for us while they were here. Brought us our first championship, helped establish a new culture, new standards that will continue to move on into the future. And, you know, to be frank, neither of them deserved it. And so for that, I apologize. For my position, you know, as a leader of the organization, I needed to be better at different points in time. I could see certain trends behind the scenes with the group, and those were worrisome. But when you have an incredibly talented roster that we have, an incredibly solid group across the board of people, you're able to play through some of that. And so ultimately, you know, I made the decision that I did last week with the hope of kind of rejuvenating the energy of the group and reestablishing some positive thoughts before the playoffs and some belief. And I think that we did that over the last 3 games. Hopefully you can see still a long way to go. But, you know, I think that the initial message that I want to make sure that people understand is that, you know, we give a lot of thanks for what they did. We're pushing forward into the future, and this season is not over yet. So that being said, I'll go ahead and open it up to questions.
Okay, reaction to that opening statement.
Very mature and very well said. Sounded like a leader.
Yeah, you know, he's rightfully so grateful to these guys. He feels the awkwardness of firing the all-time greatest coach in franchise history. And yet he's confident enough in his own evaluation of things that are going on behind the scenes that he's not wavering, you know? And he might have wavered. He did waver multiple times. He told us about 2. I think he really told us about 3 times. Or 2 different times that he wavered. The third time he made the decision. And you're sitting here not really, at least I really did not understand the firing when it happened. I had a really hard time thinking that the Nuggets could actually become a better basketball team for the remainder of the season without Michael Malone. And yet what was really missing more than anything was a spark and an energy that has absolutely come through David Adelman and a change.
He said they didn't deserve it. Did Michael Malone and Calvin Booth deserve it?
Well, when you look at the record, and Tyler pointed this out when it happened, you're 2 years removed from a world championship, right? An NBA championship. So from that standpoint, most people would say no. Mike Budenholzer got fired today after 1 year in Phoenix. He deserve it? Now, he has no history there. So
he
I guess
probably deserved it.
So you could say maybe so because he had no history there. But 10 years, that's a lot of history. And for Calvin, 5 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, 2 years as an assistant, 3 as a GM. So from that standpoint, probably not. Probably need to be done later. But from a standpoint, if I'm the leader and I need to, and I still have a belief that this group is special and can do something, then you got to do it. You remember back in Band of Brothers? Did you guys ever watch a Band of Brothers?
Of course. The one, Easy Company.
The one guy, leader at Easy Company, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden they said, right before the biggest, I said, no, we're putting you in charge now. So,
David Schwimmer, based on a real guy that had lost the trust of his company.
So
I forget the officer's name, but yeah.
And that was at the 11th hour. They were about ready to ship over.
I said, you need to go train people. We're done with you.
Yeah.
We're going.
You're good at that.
We're going to go with your assistant.
Yeah.
Who you tried to get fired.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going with him, not you.
Yeah.
We're going to let you do something else.
And Winters turned out pretty good, didn't he?
Frank Winters turned out pretty good. Yeah, I forget David Schwimmer's character's name, but it's based on a true story, and that was happening. They were about to go off to battle, and they had no faith in that dude whatsoever. And they had to make a move because people's lives were on the line. Now, it's not quite so dramatic here, but that being said, your playoff lives, what you have built in for the season's on the line. This is interesting. This is the timeline of when considerations happen. So here we go.
There wasn't an exact moment. I've seen some of the reports that are out there. Some are true. Some are completely false. One of the reasons that I'm here to talk to you guys is to make sure that there's not any false narratives out there. When there's an information void around a decision like that, sometimes certain stories or perspectives will try to get filled. And so I'm here to answer anything like that. Was there a specific moment? Obviously, there was a specific moment last week. But over the course of the season, to be completely transparent with the group, there were 2 moments in time that I identified where I hesitated. And it was either out of personal feelings or belief for the group. One was last fall. I couldn't tell you an exact date. It was around Thanksgiving at some point when I was really feeling like things were not headed in a direction or up to my standards as an organization. And I saw it was reported that I would sit in with meetings with Calvin and Coach at times, which I did. And we had great conversation in those meetings. But I need more when I'm not around. My role is not to necessarily be there on a daily basis. I need people that are policing the culture and pushing it forward for me on a daily basis. And then, I think that we went on a little run before the All-Star break. That's been reported. I saw out there that I was contemplating something around then. That is true. But, when you have a roster like we do, you have the best player on the planet. It can mask a lot of things. And so, what would be crazier, me doing what I did last week or doing it on an 8-game win streak? And so, there's no real right answer to questions that I have to ask at times. But my feeling and my belief was there was more in that locker room, and that's what I acted on.
What would have been crazier?
8-game winning streak. I mean, I don't know how you justify it other than you do it before the streak begins. That's the only time that you could have done it. But you don't have a choice to do it after you win 8 straight games. You look absolutely delusional.
They were 10-7 before Thanksgiving.
And December 7th, I think they were 10-9.
Let me see. I can do some math on that. 10-8, 11-8, 11-9, 11-10 on December 7th. 11-10, and they had lost 3 out of 4 games by December 7th. Close, man. Not good. And look at the home games they were losing too.
Yeah.
Which was like, well, what is going on here? But then again, you started the season 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-3.
Well, that's probably a win. So when you go 7-3 to
you're okay
to 11-10,
you go 7-3, and then you lose 3 of your next 4, and then we're spiraling.
You listen closely to his words, and what he tells you is, yeah, when I'm in the building, when I'm engaged, when I'm in the meeting room, these guys behaved. they got along pretty well. We had some productive conversations when I was there. But when I'm not there, that's when things spiraled, and that's when they probably just weren't communicating at all, quite frankly. Who knows how I'm not even saying they were fighting every single day. They just probably stopped communicating when they got to a certain point. And Josh did say that, one thing that he learned throughout this process is throughout periods of transition, he needs to be more involved. He needs to be there. He was asked whether that means he's going to be more involved on a day-to-day basis. He said, well, I feel like I am pretty involved, but specifically during periods of transition. So during this next period of transition, I would expect Josh Kroenke to be involved for months at a time here.
Here's why he hesitated.
Yeah, I think that they're both really good people, and that as an organization, we start with good people who work hard. And so I had good enough relationships with them. I mean, Calvin was an assistant GM here for a number of years before he elevated into his role. Coach, helped establish the foundation of who we are to this day. So my respect for them as people probably led a little bit into that hesitation, but there's also a lot of other factors that it's my job to understand. And so, some of those factors coming into the season are, I think, very well-known certain narratives. I think, one, you're trying to integrate, several new players into the rotation, whether that's young players or established veterans. Establishing a new rotation after the departure of, KCP last summer was going to take a little bit of time. I also thought that we had a few players that were playing their way into shape, to be frank. It was a very, very funny summer from a lot of ways, but from my perspective, I have to understand that, what's the human side of what a player went through last summer. A few of ours went, heartbreaking loss in Game 7, probably needed a few weeks off, had to get themselves in shape for the Olympics. And then what's your natural human reaction after the Olympics? You need some time off to recover. And so those guys are always going to come into shape, are always going to come into camp maybe a little bit behind shape of where the others might be, and that's understandable. And so that all factors into my thinking of maybe an early season decision like I mentioned. Then you fast forward to the All-Star break and you're on an 8-game winning streak. And, was it against teams that are, playoff caliber? I'd have to go back and look. But I think that those 8 games masked a trend that was going on behind closed doors that ultimately started to really affect the end of our season. And that's why I jumped the way I did.
Were there more than – it was just Jamal and Jokic who were in the Olympics, correct? Was there anybody else?
No, I think
that's it.
Yeah, I think there's those two.
Yeah, okay. So we're not talking about Jokic. So we're talking about Jamal there, obviously. But we all knew that too. We all recognize it. We said, Jamal, he's just not there yet. And Jamal, once he got himself in shape as the season went on, actually, there were some amazing moments for Jamal as the season went on. So, okay, you understand that. That's a difficult thing to get together. He defended Westbrook today, but there's no doubt Malone was leaning on Westbrook probably more than it was intended, and it was at the cost of developing the young guys. So this isn't to say, don't play your guys, play them however you want. And David Adelman has done that, hasn't he?
Yeah.
He's basically said, I'm going to play whoever I think, whoever is good. But I think Malone probably leaned on Westbrook too much during the time that Jamal needed to get in shape, and there were a lot of other injuries. And all of a sudden, hey, this isn't what we had in mind.
Now you played him too many minutes.
Now you are playing him 2 minutes, and you're not trusting Jalen Pickett very specifically. Like, that is a problem with the GM and the coach. Like, hey, everybody, we want everybody here. We want Russell Westbrook here. Why the hell is he playing 35 minutes and Pickett's, like, maybe not even getting off the bench? Certainly we could play Westbrook for, 20 minutes and give, 7 to 10 minutes to Jalen Pickett while Jamal Murray is still working to get himself in shape. And you can see where there was just a crazy lack of communication between the coach and the GM.
And that hurt you.
That's when, if Josh is being fair and he was critical about himself, and this is unfortunate because you wouldn't think that you would need to do this with highly paid GMs and coaches. But that was probably the moment where they needed to be brought into a room, and there really needed to be somebody else who's saying, okay, guys, let's chill out here for a second, and what are we really doing here? And that apparently just did not happen.
I went back and looked because I was starting to think in my head, Chuck Daly got fired from Detroit. Chuck Daly was there for 9 years. His first 2 years, he won 46 in both seasons. That's the lowest number of games he won in 9 years. He got fired 2 years after winning back-to-back championships, and I believe he won 48 games and was let go by the Pistons. So, and he's in the Hall of Fame. So great coaches get fired. At times you're thinking, really? Why?
Well, why do great coaches get fired that have been there for a decade? And Scott, you've talked about this a million different times. Why does Pete Carroll get let go from Seattle? Why does Mike Shanahan get fired from the Denver Broncos? At the end of the day, if you keep enough of the same bodies, and that's one thing Pete Carroll did very, very well, is that he rotated that building in and out. And he got rid of the superstars, he got rid of the players, so that the message did not remain stale. But when you got the same guys in that room that have been there for a decade with you, or at least a handful of them that are the most important guys, you could be the greatest coach in the world, and yet it's like listening to mom and dad tell you to eat your green beans. Right.
I'll tell you this, though, and this one I'm going to put on Malone. And I like Michael Malone, but his arrogance got the better on him on this one. Clearly, fellas, when you draft who you draft, there's a purpose for it. You know what the intent is, and you ain't the boss. You're not the GM, and you're not the owner. And even though you got a new contract and you got paid a lot, it's about square footage and restaurants. Like, you may buy a house that has a lot of square footage. You may have a fancy restaurant, but you ain't the owner, man. And why did we draft these guys if you're not going to manage the time with them, as well as Westbrook, who you like a lot? And that is on Malone. He got caught being a little too arrogant, a little too big in his britches, because even though somebody didn't step in and sort of negotiate with him and Booth, he knew what he was doing. He absolutely knew what he was doing. And you better win. If you're going to be that arrogant and you're going to supersede the intents of the organization, you better win. And when you don't win and the dauber's down and everybody's bummed out, like you just got your dog run over, you kind of got what was coming to you. So I would say he kind of did deserve it, frankly. I'll respectfully disagree with Josh Kroenke on that. You went against what the organization was set up to do. Whether you liked it or not is irrelevant. You went against it, and it didn't work.
Well,
See ya.
with that scenario, would you not say it happened 2 years in a row? I mean, the year before
Yes.
you did win 57 games, but you wore the hell out of Reggie Jackson.
Yes.
I know you're putting that all on Malone, but I put that on the organization, and I think that includes Josh Kroenke, and he's taking responsibility for that. Look, you know who Mike Malone is. So when you're drafting these guys, you know darn well who your coach is. So as an organization, you did not have a plan of conduct. You had two different minds that had two different visions. Okay, who's going to win, right? And at the end of the day, Michael Malone got to choose the playing time. Well, you as an organization had a plan for a guy that you knew wasn't going to like your plan. And quite frankly, probably wasn't going to follow your plan. So I don't know that I put that entirely on Michael Malone. I think that goes all the way up to the top. And that goes with an organizational hierarchy of who's in charge, who makes the decisions, and whose plan is it. And if the plan doesn't have continuity, I think that's tough to just put that on Michael Malone because you know damn well what Michael Malone wants to do.
At the end of the day, though, Malone forced the issue. He forced it. And he relied way too much on Westbrook, and it made Westbrook look bad. It did. He put Westbrook in a tough spot. I was listening to a podcast from friends of Russell Westbrook, and they said, listen, a lot like we've said, the dude just goes 1,000 miles an hour, period, the end. He doesn't know another way,
Right.
which is good, but you got to sort of keep it in mind that could just overwhelm, the younger guys or even the team itself, and that's not even Russell Westbrook's fault. It's not his fault. He is who he is. It was a fascinating conversation today with Josh Kroenke, but with the 3 wins and you're facing the Clippers, guys, could it have worked out better? Give me a better scenario based on everything. Give me something that could have gone better for the Nuggets.
Yeah, I mean, you feel like a dangerous team now.
You got a better scenario?
You do this way early, you get the second seed, and you're playing the first play-in team.
Well, how about this one?
Which
How
have
about,
been Memphis
hold
or
on.
Golden
I wonder if you do it way earlier, though, does it maintain the momentum, right? Like what you've got right now is you've got a little spark that started a fire. Does that fire maintain itself for half the season if you did it earlier, or is this simply a result of that spark that just came
Well,
a week ago?
they're hoping it raises a spark that lasts as long as since
The playoffs.
another 20-some games.
Yep.
They're hoping it lasts that long, aren't they?
I understand the Clippers are playing really well. They've won 8 in a row. They've won like 15 out of 17. I get it. I get all that. First of all, I wish we could just play the Rockets. That would be awesome. But I think the Rockets they could lose to what would be the 7 seed easily. Minnesota against the Lakers? Good luck, Lakers.
That's going to be a battle.
Have fun with that one. And they reseed in the NBA playoffs, correct?
No.
They do not. They do not reseed. Okay. So you're going to be stuck playing Oklahoma City in the second round. There's just brackets with the NBA. Yeah, right. Well, that could be better, I suppose.
I'm okay with that.
You're okay playing Oklahoma City second round?
Yeah.
Okay. Why?
I just think they're too young.
Okay. You don't think it's their time?
I don't, and it might be. But I just think we'll just see.
The Nuggets get a week off. It starts on Saturday at 1:30. Virtual week off, right? I mean, more or less, right? 1:30 on Saturday.